I'd like to welcome everybody. And my name's Sue Thompson. I'm from the Bayside Climate Crisis Action Group, or BCCAG, because it is a bit of a mouthful. And welcome everybody. And before we start, I would just like to acknowledge that we meet on the lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Just to give you a little bit of background on BCCAG, it started about 19 years ago in 2006, and it's grown over the years to currently over 1,000 people receiving the newsletter. I think it was about 1,024, not that long ago. And we are a volunteer organisation and not-for-profit, really looking at how to minimise the effects of climate change and increase sustainable living. And we do this by creating and delivering information, facilitating action and influencing decision makers. And we do really encourage people tonight to get involved in BCCAG if you haven't already. And we've got our BCCAG table just at the door there. And we've got some different groups, some working groups that people can sign up for. And even if you are already a member, you can sign up for one of these groups. We would love to have you involved. And then someone will contact you about that particular group. There's a few. There's communications and IT, public forums and expos, fundraising, electrifying homes and businesses, letter and email writing, demonstrations and protests, meeting politicians and government bodies, and there's a couple of extra ones, the quick response tasks group for people who don't want to become involved for too long, and there's just one that's called Other, and we are hoping to get some social events up and running too. I'd just like to welcome our exhibitors who are around the outside of the room, and also the people from GCAG. It's great to have you on board tonight too. On your chairs, you will have found a flyer, and on one side there's information about BCCAG, and on the other side there's information about our next event, and that's happening on Wednesday, the 27th of August. It's back here, and the topic is getting your home off gas and further electrifying your home. And it's probably quite good timing for that because the state government just came out with their new regulations, and some people may be getting a big gas bill between now and then with this chilly weather. So hopefully that topic will interest you. So if you keep Wednesday, August the 27th in mind, that would be great. And now I would like to introduce the MC for the night, and that is Helen Oakes. And Helen is the CEO of Renew. You might have heard of Renew, or they were known as ATA, the Alternative Technology Association. And they also have Renew magazine, Sanctuary magazine, and they organise Sustainable House Day. And if Helen doesn't get around to mentioning it, they are a wonderful organisation to donate to. So I'll hand you over to Helen. Thank you.
Is it a good time to get a home battery? I'm just going to do a quick audience survey. Who has got a home battery already? Oh, that's great. You're in the right place, like the rest of you. Who has solar power? Look at that. And this is the gap that we're trying to bridge between the solar power and the battery. Who's got an electric car? I see some of you have got batteries on wheels. Okay, so that's what this event's going to be all about. In fact, nearly a whole room put their hand up and said they had solar, and I think it was the two people around the edge that actually have a home battery. So now is a good time to be talking about home batteries because the federal government has just announced a rebate on batteries that will be rolled out nationally. They said it would start on the 1st of July. Today is the 1st of July. I'm not sure if it's actually available yet. That would be a miracle to see the government implement something quite so quickly, but it is definitely coming. And it was a commitment that was made during the last election campaign. So, just to introduce myself, as CEO of Renew, these are our two magazines that you may or may not, I don't know, do another survey. Who's a subscriber to Renew? Oh, we've got a few, but we could sell a few more. And also Sanctuary magazine, which is modern green homes. So this is about building and designing sustainable homes in Australia. Anyone a subscriber to Sanctuary? This one's beautiful. You should go and grab a look at it. I'll do you a deal afterwards. If you sign up to subscribe, you can take home a free copy tonight. So that's all I can manage. So my background is in climate change activism. I've worked for Greenpeace. I've worked for the ACT Conservation Council. The ACT was one of the first jurisdictions to actually flag getting off gas before Victoria, and then I've come to work at Renew about a year ago. And Renew is also an organisation that's been very focused on getting off gas. In fact, probably for about 10 years now. They started modelling what it would look like to run an all-electric household. So when we're thinking about an all-electric household, we've got to that point in the conversation where we're not just thinking about the appliances that we can substitute out for gas, but we're also starting to think about that entire system of the home, from electric appliances, your solar panels, and then of course how we store that energy in the battery system. And there's been quite a lot of conversation. Sorry, am I popping? I'm actually close. There's been quite a lot of conversation about how that might then roll into what people are going to do with their electric vehicles and how it all integrates together. Whether we can use our vehicles as batteries, and I'm sure these are some of the conversations and the questions that we'll get to tonight. So I'm going to introduce our speakers. I'm going to introduce all of them now, so hold them in your memory. Our first speaker is householder Andrew Sweatman. Andrew lives in Northcote and he's had a home battery for about 9 months. So he can tell us what that experience has been like. And in his day job, he provides software and consulting services for environmental health, safety and operational risk management. Welcome, Andrew. We have Travis Gribbon here from Zeco Energy. I asked him, I still got it wrong. Sorry, Travis. From Zeco Energy. Zeco Energy is a local Cheltenham supplier and installer of all things electrical and all things that aid home degasification. Travis is an electrification product manager at Zeco Energy. Thanks for being here tonight, Travis. And finally, Tristan Edis. Tristan's a well-known analyst and commentator, and if you follow Australian climate and energy matters, or if you read the Australian Financial Review or other media outlets, you would see Tristan's thoughts on this topic where he's published, and he's a Director, Analysis and Advisory at Green Energy Markets. Thanks so much for coming tonight, Tristan. So, and before we get to our first speaker, and we're going to start at the home level and then we're going to get bigger tonight. So we're going to go home, business, and then up to the sort of policy framework for this. But before we get to the speakers, I'd like to just remind you about the exhibitors around this side of the room. And you've been kind enough to come along tonight and talk to people, to give people perhaps that first window into talking to a business about what you might do next if you were looking at getting off gas or you were looking at adding a battery into your home system. So as we mentioned, we've got Zeco Energy, who are just in the middle here. We've got Specialised Solar from Lynbrook over here on the left, which is between Dandenong and Cranbourne, for those of you who aren't sure, who've done lots of work in the Bayside area. We've got iStore, who provide the heat pumps, hot water heat pump services. iStores come in 2 sizes. How many people have got a heat pump hot water system already? Right, so I'm guessing a lot of you are already off gas. Quite a few of you are already off gas. And I feel like I've forgotten somebody. Oh, Australian Energy Assessments, down here on the left. Hey guys, thanks for coming. And Solving Zero. Use your energy meter data to find out the right battery for your home. So that's a system where you can actually get these guys to look at the last 12 months of your energy bills and figure out what size battery might be best suited. So thank you so much for coming along, Sam, at Solving Zero and Australian Home Energy Assessments. All right, enough talking from me. We're going to hear from our three speakers and then we're going to make sure that we leave some time for questions afterwards. Great, thanks, Andrew.
Can everyone hear me okay? Right, just a little bit. Okay, yeah, so my name's Andrew Sweatman. I live in Northcote. I did bring my passport to cross the Yarra, so yeah, like many people in the audience, we've been long users of solar panels. We date back to the prehistoric era of 2007 when we installed that and got 60 cents feed-in tariff. So one of those. What I'll talk about today is really we've installed batteries in the last 9 months. We've sort of, slowly over a period of time electrified our house. And we did a few things recently just to try to make the house even more sustainable. And the battery is one of those things we looked at. So I'll tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly about what it's like, what the hype may be, and what the reality is. And so we'll get straight into it, and when we sort of point to the slide that we get through. So why batteries? I won't go too much into the big picture, but the key issue, and I'm sure you've all sort of heard of it, is the duck's back or the duck's curve. So if people haven't heard of it, I think it's quite a nice analogy. It's that we're all users of solar. We've created this great initiative where we've got 4 million households where we've all created this big amount of solar energy during the middle of the day. But at night, as we all know, hopefully it's hydro or wind or other renewables will take that up. But then we still actually need the coal, the gas. The little blue bit there is battery discharge. We hopefully want more of that discharge, pushing more of that duck's curve or duck's back into the evening so we don't have so much issues with the grid, but also we start to remove the need for fossil fuels into the evening, part of our long journey towards net zero. So there's the duck's back, and hopefully we can get some reduction in the camel's humps as well. That's the other sort of analogy. I always think we should try to get towards the platypus, which would be the nice straight curve. Next one. So what's been our experience? This is where it starts to get interesting. I'll take all the dirt. Okay, next slide. So this is our house in Northcote. We moved in about 2004. We moved in, it was a 0.9 star zero house. It was essentially a tent. It had no insulation in the roof. It had nothing. It was like, it was an outback experience. It's my wife and I live in the house, sort of empty nesters. We have our son who moved out recently, and it's amazing how a young son or young adult moves, how much energy savings occurred as well. Long showers. And this is our most recent addition, the batteries, which I'll explain in a moment, that go down by the side of our house. And the fact that they're by the side of the house next to weatherboards is a whole nother story. Next slide. Okay, so what do we actually have as a system? We have a 10.5 kilowatt solar system on the roof. It's got in-phase microinverters. It's got some trees around the house. That was a recent revision of what we already had in the house. It's a lithium iron phosphate battery. Obviously, you're trying to get the safest possible system. It costs about $10,000 all up. We did do it 9 months ago, but given the amount of time it takes to do any renovation this day, I think we ordered this like 2 years ago. It's just that long, please. Next slide. All right, this is where it gets a bit challenging. So when any salesperson says, would you like a battery? And it's like buying just a fridge, we'll just bang it in. It's not the case. Really, you have to basically make sure it's got space around it, 60 centimetres either side, 90 across the top. If it's near a habitable room, you have to make sure there's fireproofing. You want it as close to the meter system as much as possible. We were trying to do all these other sustainable options, like all the water tanks. They're our water batteries. And we have our hot water system, pumps, etc. The key thing is really what we had to do was, because we had people working on the house, this is probably my OCD tendency, had to have everyone there on the day. If the supplier said he's going to sell it to us, he has to be there, he or she has to be there to actually back up what they're going to actually provide to us. You have to come and show where you're going to put it, not just leave it to the contractor. So we had that person, we had the electrician, the plumbers, everyone there, because it's really important, at least from my perspective, that you just don't get dumped with the system. It's like you buy it, and all of a sudden the contractor turns up. What did they sell me? What was all this system about? So it's really important to make sure that I would say the line of custody of the person who's selling it to you actually is there on site to represent what the contractor is going to do. Okay? Next one. So this is sort of the issues we had, is we wanted to maintain the heritage style of the house. We really didn't want a big fibro sheet down the side of the house because of the fireproofing. So we actually got a product which is fireproof. It's on the left, and to the front of the house is the old weatherboards. You won't know any difference, but that's great. That was the whole intent. You could basically, on one side of the house, basically go fireproof, keep the rest of the weatherboards on the rest of the house without impacting it. But because I probably ordered the system 2 years ago, it was run by a company called Supplier. They got bought out by one viable Einstein in German. It essentially meant that it sort of went through a few changing hands. So the first person who came along, he sort of, with the electrician, put all the holes in the weatherboards, where they should go. We were lucky enough to get a second contractor who got involved in the project as well and didn't agree where those holes should be. And so basically, a whole bunch of these weatherboards had to come off, and then they had to be put back on and repainted. So the sort of bit down the bottom is essentially, make sure there's not two contractors, make sure there's not two people who have different opinions on what to do. The company was very generous. That what happened in the end, I said, I spent a lot of time doing project management between these guys. I want compensation, so I got them to pay me some money, because I'm not really prepared to spend 8 hours of my day managing, guys, not knowing what they're doing on site. That's not all actually really good guys, but I see the fault in the sales, independent contractors, not often talking to each other carefully enough. Okay, next one. The advantages. So the advantage of the system, go to the next slide, is we did choose the Enphase system. And again, because we bought it 2 years ago, the technology has changed a lot. We wanted the Enphase microinverters with a shade, and as we say in business, we wanted one neck to strangle. We didn't want to have lots of different hardware solutions, at least that's my game. So we went for an integrated solution. It gave us a simple dashboard. And again, the critical thing is once you get information in the dashboard, it improves the system so much because you get an understanding as to how you're actually using the power. Also went for a company with a 15-year guarantee on the system, so that was quite important. Next one. The disadvantages with the system that we went for, again, I'll tell you what's and all. Next one. We don't have an EV. We almost ticked every other box. We have the solar, we now have the batteries. You might see the banged up Prius out the front. We just don't drive very much. And we're in Northcote, we have off-street parking. So until we can get some mechanism to do that, I know there's a lot out there, we haven't been able to take advantage of that, but we plan to in the future. It wasn't Australian made. We tried to get every other component in the house having local content. That's not possible. And we don't use a virtual power plant at this stage. I really want to run a year, exactly how the system would work, and then be able to start to make some decisions about how we evolve the system. Next slide. The bills. Okay, so this is the source of truth. We can do lots of modelling with everything else we get, but this is the information we get from Diamond Energy between October to mid-June. Next slide. Okay, so essentially a standard household for about 2.6 people. We're about 2.5, with our Sunday showers it definitely was more than 2.6, or it felt like that was 2.6. So essentially the blue is what we push to the grid, so you can see we're doing very well in terms of the solar panels. We're pushing at least sometimes 2 to 3 possibly amount over summer. Obviously it gets worse in winter, and the battery and our solar consumption keeps our consumption or our imports quite low. That's straight from Diamond Energy, who's our retailer. Next slide. This is how much we spent. So in December, we got a credit of $504. Then we got $120, and most recently we paid $12. That's not just the energy costs, that's all the fees and everything. So it's a total bill we got credit. And it's up there, But I was wondering, does anyone know why we got a 504 credit at that period of time?
60-cent feed-in tariff.
Bingo! That was a 60-cent feed-in tariff for 3 weeks. If we had got the 66-cent feed-in tariff for all of this period of time, we would have made $4,500. So there you go. Perhaps not equitable, but
How does it change that system?
what's that?
How does it change that system?
We bought it in 2007. They changed over all the solar panels in October, and they didn't cancel it. They just kept it going for 3 weeks. And November 1 was the cut-off date. So, possible. Well, it was a strange little series of events. Next one. So, how did we go? Okay. So, this is sometimes like the good and the bad, and gee, weren't you going to make more money than that? Sort of thing. So, over a period of time in the last October to June, we've made, well, saved $1,035. Most of that is solar in use. Essentially, us, like everyone else here, solar is essentially, responsible for most of our energy consumption. We use the panels. We do get a little bit of feed in, not as much as we got in December, and we use the battery at night. Next slide. So it's only $250 we made in that time, but most of that was summer, and this is what we found is there's such a seasonal difference in these systems. Next slide. So normally summer, it was great, everyone's enjoying themselves down at Brighton with the sun, and that's reflected in the next slide, which is exactly what happened. The battery at the bottom is the green bit. It barely dips. Well, this was Christmas Day, we weren't actually here, so it's a little bit of a cheat. It barely dips at all because we don't really dip into it at all. We push almost all of it out. The little red bit is where I forgot to turn off the hot water system when we're away, so it wasn't perfect. But we essentially, on those days, we barely use the battery at all. We've got it's a terrible return on investment on a day like that for a battery. Very good for solar, terrible for a battery. Next slide. But Melbourne's not always like that, pretty much like today. It's pretty grim. Next slide. We turn on our heat pump. We have underfloor heating in the bathroom. We start to use our induction cooktop, everything a bit more in winter. And therefore what happens, next slide, is the graph starts to change dramatically. You can see the green bit at the bottom where drawing a lot of the battery overnight, dips a little bit in the morning when where we got the underfloor heating in the bathroom turning on for people to have the showers. And then during the day, it starts to go up again, combination of us using a bit of power, pulling up the battery, and then we start to pull it down again. So we're drawing, it's called discharge, it's like we've got a 10 kilowatt hour battery, where we're using it all up. Much better return on investment because they're actually taking advantage of all of the capacity of the battery. Okay, next one. So this is really the seasonal variation. So in December, we may make $4.50. In June, we made about $4. The green bit at the bottom is what we're using from the grid. The blue bit on the left is what we're getting from sending solar to the utility. And then the little bit at the top is the battery discharge. You can barely see the solar on the right-hand side. Most of it is battery discharge. We're not really pushing much to the grid at all. We're using it all up, and then we're storing it, and then we're pushing it out at night. So it's almost like there's two, at least our experience in Melbourne, there's like two different models, summer and winter, and all of it in between. Next one. So this means I looked at some projections and winter assumptions, is that what we would be saving over a year, a few more months to go, this will probably make about 1,700, 687 will be, solar powering us. We'll be pushing some to the utility, and we'll probably make about $570. But that's because that differentiation, what we're not doing is we're only really using the battery. We've got a 10 kilowatt hour battery, we're only really using utilization of 65%. We're not really making the most out of it. Well, one season we are, one season we aren't. Next slide. So the payback, the assumptions, people shouldn't just do a straight economic one. They should actually look at, costs going up, battery utilisation going down, feed-in tariff of 5 cents, purchasing energy at 25 cents. Next line. And we found that pretty much like solar quotes, our return on investment was about 12 years. We paid off in 12 years. 15-year guarantee, so by the end of that time, we've made some money. Next slide. But we're only using 65% utilisation of the battery. At least we're learning. We're learning what technology is and how to use it better. Next one. If we were to consider a virtual power plant, a VPP, Diamond could give us 200 to 450 years as a sign-on bonus, or at least a reverse fee, and that would give us 30 cents per kilowatt hour in the evening periods. So we could start to make more money. We could make another $687 and probably make $1,248 all year from the battery. But if we've got an EV and charge it from a combination of solar and the battery, we'd start to make a lot more. So all these people have got EVs, great. That's where we want to be. We want to start using things or petrol and electricity rather than petrol. Next one. So it's the Clean Energy Council has touted these numbers, and I've seen them used a lot. That if you buy a battery, it'll save you about $900 with a VPP or a similar system, pushing it back to the grid, make about $1,050. That's about right. From our studies, that's reasonable. It's not great. Next one. So return on investment, the green bar below is our 12 years from just having the battery and using it. If we looked at the VPP, it'd be about 7 or 8 years. And if we could get the EV, combination of solar, pulling from the battery, making the most use of it as we would in summer rather than just idling, we could start to see it being 5 or 6 years. That's the assumptions. Next one. So the next steps for us is I'm a sucker for government grants. We took advantage of the green loans in 2007 to get a green loan. When they were phasing out the 60-cent feed-in tariff, we quickly jumped on and got more panels at this stage. So we actually have expanded it from 10 kilowatt hours to 20 kilowatt hours. And that's starting to, based on the assumption, we'd really like to have an EV to really start to maximise our returns, and maybe a virtual power plant. We'll see how that goes. I really want to run this for a year to see exactly how it goes without, my brain can't. My brain is struggling with this amount of information, let alone more. Next one. But the challenge is living in Northcote, we'd have to put some sort of mechanism. So unfortunately, we're a bit challenged in that area. Next slide. So what have we achieved over this period of time? Basically, more importantly for me at least, is we've saved 6.7 tonnes of CO2 from solar use, pushing to the grid, the battery. So essentially, net zeroed our house plus another house in Victoria. We've gained 84%. We're 84% independent of the grid. I'd love to be even more, but there are limits to values with this. On a cold winter day, it's impossible. But just you get 100%. It's just not possible, at least in my opinion. But what's more important, and it was really great to see everyone here with the use of solar, is that I don't know if anyone goes back to 2007. Probably it did. Is that I imagine I was probably household number 8,000 that got solar panel. There's now 4 million households in Australia. If you look at what energy was produced by solar, it was probably about 12 or 13% household solar. So we've made a massive societal change with just, I would say, people power. And whilst the batteries won't solve all the problems, at least for me, they send very strong signals to both politicians, society, that in the lack of an absence of really good energy policy, people will take it up and prove that this is really where we want to be. And by doing these things, we not only do return on investment, we will send a very strong signal to society and politicians together that we should really do more. So I'd say that what we've done, everyone's collectively done with solar, we could start to show is possible with batteries. So next slide. So its potential by 2030, we could have 2 million batteries. That may start to, get the camel's back. Let's get to a platypus stage. When I bought solar panels, They're 10 times more expensive. Anyone buying solar panels now from everyone who invested in 2007 is getting a 10% of the cost. That'd be great if we could get batteries to 50% cost and make it more equitable for everyone to be able to do it as standard. And we can start to support our renewable energy targets. So thank you. And let's just get away from the next slide, move away from the duck spat, and let's get to the platypus. All right?
Thank you, Andrew. So our next speaker is Tristan from Zeco Energy. Travis, sorry. Thanks. Oh my God. It's the paper, Tim. It's the paper. It's going to be fun. I'm going to get something wrong, Travis. Travis is going to talk to us a little bit about the next level up in terms of the battery products and the rebate that's coming and what might be available to people as consumers. So over to you.
Right, so there's no production price in this, that's the first thing. So if you were expecting this is what this is going to cost, you can come and talk to us or whoever's here, but this is not a production price talk. My name's Travis Gribbon. I head up electrification at Zeco Energy. We're a local energy business who is focused wholly and solely on getting people off gas. We throw little gas abolishment parties, which is really good fun, bring around a bottle of whatever is your favourite drink and watch multi-net leave your street. It's fun, different things flow different people. I'm unashamedly a numbers nerd, so my role in the business is to take you in your unique situation and show you what it looks like over a 5, 10, 15-year journey. Because this is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a moment in time. We're talking about a 15-year asset here. And again, numbers nerd, I'll be able to tell you what it looks like from a carbon, a comfort and a cash perspective if you do nothing, or what it looks like if you do electrify. And that's not just behind the meter at your home, that we can also model that looking at your mobility. So if you do get an EV, if you get 2 EVs or whatever it may be. So if anyone here, put your hand up if you're a numbers nerd, come and talk to me and we'll talk. I'm sure Carl will come and speak to me. We'll talk about what it looks like. So that's really the focus here. It's about how do we unlock the value that's in market at the moment and in market for you specifically, not based on the product and price that's out there. Okay, so I'll cover the opportunity, then pitfalls, and there are pitfalls, and then what to do. So everyone talks about, we've all read forums, we've all listened to Finn, probably listened to Carl, and we get sort of stuck in the weeds, but I'll just run you through the process of what are the opportunities in here now. So go forward. So again, and I'm going to say it a lot, it's all about value. How do we unlock the value that's in market at the moment? Anyone who tries to hide the value that is present for any product and price solution is doing you a disservice. So that's the first thing. As was already mentioned, there's government support. So the government support is a federal solution. It is based on usable storage that sits behind the meter for your battery. So if we use 10 kilowatt hours as a nominal figure, it equates to around $370 per usable kilowatt hour. So you're looking at about a $3,700 rebate as of today. That drops in the new year with STCs, but that's, people are here saying I've got a rebate that I can get access to. That's what you're looking at. Self-consumption, that was touched on in great detail. I'm glad I didn't put in all of the numbers, which is my one. But self-consumption is the real, your primary focus. What have I got? So, so it was about 90% of people here put their hand up for solar. You will be, if you don't already have a battery, you will be pushing value out to the grid. So how do we unlock that? We unlock that by making sure we're already generating it. Let's store it. So whatever we're not using efficiently, let's store it. That's the opportunity to really unlock some value without understanding what everyone in the room's retail tariffs are. If you're paying 25 cents off peak and you're paying 35 to 38 cents in peak, you're generating, if you put in a PV system, you're generating it anywhere between 6.5 to 7.5 cents. Again, I'm talking numbers. So if you're generating and it's costing you about 6.5 to 7.5 cents to generate, and you're sending it back out to the grid for 4%, you're handing money over to someone who's going to then go and on-sell it. So what we do is we're saving 38 cents basically there. And the next thing is energy arbitrage. I won't go into it in too much detail, but if you can't generate enough at the moment based on the duck curve, which we're going to try and turn into a platypus, and that's a biology thing I don't want to touch on. With that duck curve, we've got the opportunity to do what's called a forced charge during the day. So while there's excess production out there, draw that down at a zero tariff, or if you're playing in the wholesale market with an amber or something like that, you can actually get paid to fill your battery and then you're using it throughout the day. So that's from a dollars and cents perspective, that's the value you can unlock. Then there's the whole security thing. Now, depending on where you are, it's in Bayside, we're all sitting in United Energy as a DNSP, pretty stable. If you're sitting in the hills, it makes a lot more sense where you'll be looking at essential circuit backup or essential power supply or whole of home backup, because you have frequent 1, 2, 6. We have had instances where someone had a 9-day blackout. That's the reality in some areas. It's not in this area, which is good. Okay, so what are the pitfalls? When there's a rebate, there are sharks and they circle. And that's just, it doesn't matter. They did it with LED lighting, they did it with, I think I had a joke with someone about shower heads. And what they do is they come out with a gold, silver, bronze package, and the value is up here, and there's a special discount, and there's a federal government rebate, and normally $7 billion, but for you it's 999. It's those sort of offers. Anyone, and I touched on it earlier, if you get product and price offers that don't deal with you and your specific needs, walk. That's the real thing here. The next pitfall is getting it wrong. If we talk about unlocking that value from a dollars and cents perspective, getting it wrong, you get one chance at this federal government rebate and you can't double dip. So you need to get it right first, because it's a first and last opportunity for you. And then the worst thing is, if you combine the two, is letting the sharks get it wrong for you, because if they see someone who has a lack of knowledge in the space and there's a deal on the table, sharks will go out to you and sell you something that you just don't need. So that's a pitfall. Unfortunately, it's not our industry, it's every industry. As soon as there's a rebate or an incentive out there, people will try and move it. Party group, run. Okay, what don't you know? And this is the fun part. So as I said, I head up electrification. My job is to be able to demonstrate what it looks like for you to go from 2 mixed energy use retail bills to as close to zero, believe it or not, as close to zero as possible with one, which is an electricity bill. We need to know what our future home looks like. So if you base all of your thinking around today, you'll be doing yourself a disservice. So the art is modelling it. Get it right, get it done properly, and get it done in detail. So speak to the guys over here at Solving Zero, speak to whoever it is. It doesn't have to be us, but the real opportunity here is future-proofing yourself, your wallet, and your home, and the property value as well, by getting it modelled and getting it modelled right, because gas isn't going to be here forever. And if you do want to stay on gas for whatever elements, I'm sure there's not many people in the room, you're going to be paying for the privilege. What else don't you know? Power versus energy. There are people that have been in the industry for a very long time and dropped the hour from kilowatt hours and whatnot. Power is the amount you use at any given time. So how much power do I need in this instance versus kilowatt hours, which is energy? How much do I need over a given period of time? So you can throw big numbers around, like 48 kilowatt hour battery, and we've seen this, 48 kilowatt hour battery with a 5 kilowatt inverter. So what that means is you can only draw 5 kilowatt hours in an hour, so that battery is never going to be used. But a shark wants that sort of thing. Then you've got to look at fail rates. So given there's an incentive, more products come onto the market. There are a lot of brands out there, or manufacturers out there that didn't have batteries, but now they do because there's an incentive. So what you don't have as a consumer, when you're not in the industry, you don't get to see what are the fail rates, what are the problems with this product, and there is no silver bullet for anyone. But you've got to see what their fail rates are, understand, and if products do fail, but what's their support like as well? Do they have local support? Are they available? Will they come out and fix the problem? And if I want to nerd out a little bit, it's the LCOE, the levelized cost of energy. How much of this asset, which is going to last you 15 years, how much value can I extract over time? So, Tim, you're the best assistant I've ever had. So what's the pathway? So I've shown you, here's some opportunities. You've got this value that we can unpack, and then we've got the pitfalls around making sure you don't get coerced into some sort of deal. I just talked you up. First thing is no desktop quotes. Anyone who says, oh, give me your address and I'll send you a quote, that happens. You know it does. Great example was cable runs, placement of the inverter, what are we dealing with? Demand a site inspection. If someone's not willing to come out and actually look you in the eye and site the property and understand the unique and the nuances based on that specific property, then they're just trying to push a product. As I mentioned earlier, model it based on your future needs. What you need today versus what you need in 5, 10 or 15 years is going to be very different. Modelling on 5 to 10 years is really important. It's really important because that's where you start to see that ramp up in value extraction, because we're not always going to have gas. The next thing is, folks, when the modeling's done, and I guess a lot of people, we get asked, I've had a couple of people ask me already, how much is it for a product A, and what if I got 2? No one's asked me for a cash price today, which is good, but it's those sort of questions that we try and avoid. So when I say to people, I don't know what it's going to cost you for a battery because I don't understand your unique situation. And what you need is not going to be the same as the person next to you unless that's your partner and you're sharing the same anymore. Don't be focused on brands. Be focused on, I need this amount of storage, which is the energy, and my power requirements is going to determine your inverter. And then once you know that, then you can go and find brands out there, manufacturers that are going to meet your specific needs, rather than saying this aesthetically pleasing 13.5 kilowatt hour battery is what I want. Let's focus on what you need. Backup isn't required, and I touched on it earlier. It's not required until it is. So it's something, if you're going through the process, decide if you do want backup. Obviously, medical needs and so forth is another consideration altogether, but make a call on that early. So when you're dealing with the market, make sure that they're fully aware of whether you need backup or not. Ask questions. Ask lots of questions, and when you've run out of questions, ask people who have already gone and got a battery before what they wish they'd asked previously, and then you get it right. So that's it. Thanks.
Make it sound a little bit scary.
It's a $10,000 to $15,000 investment, and I want to get it right.
I've got a question that Tim pre-prepared for you, which I almost want to ask now, which is, will my battery burn my house down?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to go really big picture now and look at the sort of the more policy landscape and thinking about how batteries might actually impact our decentralised energy, more rapidly, hopefully decentralising energy system. So I'd like you to welcome Tristan Edis, who's going to talk to us about all things the bigger picture. Thanks, Tristan.
Thanks for being invited to present. So I will bombard you with numbers, unfortunately for you, and hopefully you can see them on the screen. I'll do my best to try and explain them. Tim, if you can go across. So the business that I run, we provide research reports, essentially market research reports for large electricity companies and large energy companies. And in spite of, thankfully for me, in spite of Tony Abbott coming along, there are actually a number of carbon credit style certificate markets out there, and we make a living analysing those markets on behalf of a number of energy companies, and also helping them inform investment decisions around building large wind farms, large solar farms, not so much large batteries, but we also do forecasting work for the Australian Energy Market Operator, who are trying to plan their electricity system on our behalf, and whether we need to build transmission lines or not, where we need to build them. And as part of that, we do some work on trying to forecast how much solar, rooftop solar will be installed and how many batteries will be installed in Australia out to 2060. And I can tell you that the likelihood of us getting that right to 2060 is probably pretty close to zero. But nonetheless, that's you've got to do that because transmission lines last a long time, and so you need to be thinking on those sorts of time frames. And so I'm going to give you a bit of a big picture around the overall electricity market and what's going on there, and how home batteries might fit in within that broader context. If you want to move to the next slide. So this, in the green we've got here is the output from all wind farms in the national electricity market, which doesn't include Northern Territory and WA, so it's not really national, but that includes Victoria, New South Wales, etc. So it's most of the electricity consumed in the country. And there's a lot of variability in the output of wind. A few years ago, I'd probably like to think that if we started installing more wind farms in Queensland, we'd even out a bit of that variability, but it's unfortunately not proven to be true. And so this is really over the space of a little over 24 hours. We were producing at 4 p.m. on the 25th of June, 9,000 megawatts of wind, which is a lot of power in the context of the overall system. So average total electricity demand averages about 21,000 megawatts. So we were producing 9,000, so almost half of that. And then by 3 p.m. the next day, we were producing just 392 megawatts. So a very small fraction of total demand within the space of a very short period of time, which is why we need batteries. Okay, they're going to be an important part of the solution in order to get ourselves off fossil fuels. So that's the context of wind. If we move on to the next slide, the chart on your right, I've just plucked out. The average shape of generation in October in New South Wales. I just picked this out because it was a good illustration of the fact that over the middle of the day, we have a really large amount of our electricity needs already coming from solar. And the green sliver is wind. In the end, wind is going up and down, but once you average it out over the month, it looks a bit like Bayside. It kind of doesn't vary all that much by hour. But we're already getting to a point where we've squeezed out a lot of the fossil fuels in the middle of the day. And according to our forecasts, if they're right, that we produce for the Australian Energy Market Operator, we are going to have a lot more solar than what we have today. So we are going to be pushing to the point where actually we're meeting all of the electricity demand with all the solar that's installed. So if we're doing that, we're going to have to spill a whole heap. We're not going to be able to use it all. So we've got to, in order to be able to effectively utilise all the solar that we're producing probably in around 15 years' time, we're going to need to throw some of it in a battery, and then we can start taking out, then there's that chunk towards the later part of the evening where it's pretty much all black and coal. We want to get rid of that. So we want to take some of that heap of good stuff in the middle of the day and start displacing some of that, the black stuff. And then at the same time, also we want to be managing that wind, the fact that it's going up and then it's going down, and we can do that within relatively short time periods. We also want to help manage that as well. Now the chart on your left-hand side, that is the electricity price, the average wholesale electricity price over the 23-24 financial year, and across each state. And if you look at Victoria and South Australia, which are the red and the blue lines, it might be a bit hard for you to see, but they're dipping down into negative prices in the wholesale market. So our electricity market can go to negative prices, and it's there for a good reason, because it's very hard for a coal generator to switch off and then switch back on. So we decided, well, okay, sometimes a coal generator might want to pay to stay online so that they can then make really good money in the evening. So hence we let electricity prices go to negative prices. But this is on average across the whole entire year, including winter, electricity prices consistently go negative in South Australia in the middle of the day, and that happens quite a bit in Victoria as well. And Queensland dips towards about zero in the middle of the day. New South Wales is much higher. There's a variety of reasons I won't go into. But nonetheless, then prices spike upwards to quite high levels in the late afternoon, evening. And this happens sort of on a consistent basis. This is the average picture across the entire year. And so the problem is we're all enthusiastic about solar, we're all installing solar, we're driving prices negative. What that means is the wind farm operator or the prospective person that wants to invest in a wind farm or wants to invest in a solar farm goes, actually, I'm not going to make money, bugger it, I'm just not going to build it. We want them to build them, right? We don't want to just force them out because we built solar on our home. We want to be encouraging them and ensuring that they're making good money as well. And so, because we need everyone doing this, we can't just do it on households. So what we want to be able to do is lift that price, that wholesale price, in the middle of the day by putting some of our solar into our battery, or electrifying our household and consuming power during the middle of the day, and then push some of that power into that afternoon, evening, and push that spike down and bring the power price down in that afternoon bit. But overall, in the end, that'll mean that the solar farm operator's making a reasonable amount of money. They're not absolutely ripping us off blind in the evening, but they're making reasonable money such that they'll build it, and the wind farm operator will do the same. And manufacturers and other households that don't have solar or don't have a battery see more reasonable electricity prices on their bills as well. So that's why we need batteries, essentially, is we can already see an economic signal saying don't build any more solar. That's what that wholesale market is telling people, is don't build more solar. We've got plenty of electricity in the middle of the day. Now, reality is we don't quite, because we haven't got rid of all that black yet. We've got to get rid of all that black, but that's essentially what that market is doing. We move to the next slide. So batteries we can see we need the batteries today. That's what the market is telling me in the data that I'm seeing, is we needed batteries, and we needed them probably yesterday, but we definitely need them today. Now, this is a little bit of modelling, that economic modelling that we've done for the Australian Energy Market Operator. And what we do there is we've got a whole heap of different input assumptions around what electricity prices households are going to be paying, by what time of day they're going to be paying, what networks are up to, electricity networks with their tariff structures, and then we try and model out what the feed-in tariff might be, model that all out to how much money will a householder save on their electricity bill from solar out to 2060, and then what would that mean for their payback on their system, and therefore how many people are going to be willing to install a solar system. And what our modelling suggests, and you would see it probably on your electricity bill coming forward this new financial year, is the amount of savings that can be delivered by a solar system is dramatically falling relative to what it was back in 2019. We had a bit of a spike upwards thanks to Vladimir Putin pushing up the cost of gas and coal for us. So you can thank Vladimir for improving the returns on your solar system for a short period of time, but that's over. Okay, and so then you see this fall in revenue, and then what that means is, so that black line, that's the total number of systems that have been installed in Australia. And so we saw very few in 2008. We saw a spike upwards to about 350,000 systems. I think that was 2012. Then a whole heap of subsidies dropped off. The feed-in tariff dropped off. The federal government rebate for solar systems dramatically reduced, and we saw a plunge in solar systems being installed over the subsequent years to 2015. So anyone that tells you that it's onwards and upwards doesn't know what they're talking about. They just have a very short memory. Then we saw a revival of solar system installs from 2016 onwards. And why was that? It's because electricity prices started going back up. And people started talking about electricity prices going back up. So people started worrying about it. And the financials of a solar system looked better. So more people installed them. But as those financials of the solar system deteriorate, we expect that the number of people willing to install a solar system will decline substantially from where it's been over the last few years. We also got a little bit of a fillip from COVID because a whole lot of people couldn't spend money on going out to restaurants, and they were sitting at home and thinking, geez, I'm spending a lot of money on my electricity bill, I'm stuck at home. And they went to Bunnings, they went to Harvey Norman, and they also got a solar system installed. So there was a little bit of an artificial spike upwards there that probably wouldn't have happened were it not for COVID. But our forecast is a major decline in solar system installs looking forward. Partly it's a saturation effect too. You've already got one, you don't need one. Okay, so you end up tapping out the market. So to ameliorate that loss of energy savings from the solar system, we need to bring the batteries in to improve the overall financials of the total system. If you move on to the next slide. And so this is a picture in our little model. We do this little model that's a figurative household of how much electricity they consume by time of day. And then we punch in what the solar system would generate based upon variation in solar output from BOM. And then we work out, okay, how much of that solar system would they self-consume? How much can they throw into the battery? And then how much would they end up exporting to the grid? And so this is an averaged household, which doesn't exist, of course, but this is our, in aggregate, it's a decent picture for what people will see in the financials. So about a third goes into each of those things. This is for a 6.6 kilowatt system. Most people are installing something much bigger than that, and a 10 kilowatt hour battery, nowhere you go. Then how much money do they make out of that? Now, solar self-consumption is $400, and this is in 2035, of course, so I've got different assumptions there. The battery discharge will make the lion's share of the money out of that. Even though it's a third of the generation, it's the lion's share of the money of the savings from the aggregated system will be due to the battery, from what we can see. And you'll make barely anything from the solar exports. And in fact, you might find that your network wants to switch off your solar system on a somewhat regular basis as well, so you can have a bit of curtailment. But you don't care because you barely get paid anything for the solar exports. So that's the picture we have in the future that suggests batteries are really, really important to the financial returns on a solar, and also will be important to hopefully people continuing to want to install solar, but also large wind farms, large solar farms. We want to move to the next slide. So this is kind of our picture. The blue line is battery installs per annum. So 2016, barely anyone was installing batteries. And then in the green line, I've got solar system sales, and I've got them for two different scenarios, step change and progressive change. But essentially you get the gist. Batteries are tiny in terms of the numbers being installed relative to solar sales historically. But then what happens is that blue line starts spiking up towards the green line, and we start seeing almost all solar systems, according to our forecast, installing a battery system. But we can see that happening, and this step change scenario, we included a rebate almost exactly the same as what the government has announced in that forecast. But we didn't anticipate much change in battery uptake till about 2028, because we did the sums and we went, oh, batteries don't pay back. They take a really long time to pay back on the investment, and so people won't be that enthusiastic. And we already know we're wrong. From a range of different information sources, we know that people are really enthusiastic about batteries, and we'll probably see that blue line jump up much closer to the green line this year, based upon what we're hearing from a range of people in the industry. which is great news. But it also means people are being persuaded to install a battery. We buy lots of things without looking at the payback. We buy very expensive cars based upon the fact that we think they're cool and they impress our neighbours and that sort of thing. And if you feel like that for a battery, I think that's awesome because that's going to help the whole community. And the fact that the payback may not necessarily be sterling relative to a range of other investments or putting your money in super or something like that, it's great. Go do it. But we had kind of been quite ruthless in looking at historical patterns for payback. But I think in the end we were too pessimistic about human nature, and people are going to be more likely to install batteries than what we thought, which is really good. And the other thing is they're going to be much bigger than what we thought they were going to be. So we had anticipated roughly the average size of a system being a battery system historically in the last few years has been about 10 kilowatt hours. And it looks like people are generally going to go for systems that are about maybe 15 to 20 kilowatt hours because of some other things to do with installer economics. So if we just move to the next slide. So this is, so I collected a bunch of data off a great website that Tim Forsey is responsible for called My Efficient Electric Home. And lots of people are posting quotes of their that they've received for their battery system and also often for a solar system in combination. So I went and grabbed all that data, not all of it, by the way. This is just a small sample. Each dot is a quote for a battery system. And along the bottom is the size of that system. So we've got systems getting up to 50 kilowatt hours. And then on the vertical axis is the price that people are paying per unit of capacity per kilowatt hour. And what we see is you go a smaller system, you pay way more per kilowatt hour. You go a bigger system, you pay way less. Now, our assumption in our model was that the average price people would be paying was $1,100 per kilowatt hour for their system. And what you can see is a number of those quotes are well below $1,100. There are people out there picking up battery systems for $600 a kilowatt hour, a number of them. And these are what I would call a reputable brand, many of them. A highly reputable brand that is a very large proportion of the Australian market. That doesn't include Enphase, who are right at the top end, by the way, in the quotes that I saw. Enphase are absolutely top of the market. Although you got a really good price on your Enphase system, I would say.
2 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. Really good price on your Enphase system. And Tesla would be about 1,000, 1,200 kilowatt hour mark, which is a good, well-known brand, and they are a good quality system. But some of those other systems are from highly reputable, large Chinese manufacturers who do supply good quality product and have for some time in inverters, for example, and generally you'd probably expect it will be a reliable product that will get good support. So the installers will be very much encouraging you and pushing you towards a bigger system. And the issue with the modelling that we did was we looked at it and we went, you really struggle to use much more than 15 kilowatt hours based on the average electricity consumption profile of the household that did not have an EV. And CSIRO, who are our competing modeller for AEMO, said, oh, there's no way anyone's going to get anything bigger than 10 kilowatt hours. And so in the end, they biased their overall aggregate forecast towards solar and away from me, which I was really upset about. And it turns out I'm going to be right, or I'm going to be less wrong than solar and wind, because they feel this is not rational. The house has to install a bigger system. So if you move to the next slide, this is a bit confusing, I know, but we're going back to 2013 here. The orange was a solar system less than 3 kilowatts. They used to dominate the market, and then the next one after that was less than 5 kilowatts. That was the blue. So they dominated. So almost 90% of systems were smaller than 5 kilowatts. They now they'd struggle to represent about 5% of systems being installed in the residential sector today. people have moved towards bigger and bigger solar systems over time. Their electricity consumption hasn't gotten any bigger over that time period. In fact, it's got a little bit less in some cases. But what's happened is a bigger solar system is much, much more profitable for an installer for a variety of different reasons. And as module prices have got cheaper, and so what it is it's about labour efficiency. They've got to get a bunch of guys up on the roof. They've got to get them to site. They've got to get all the panels to site. That is a big chunk of the cost. And so once you got them there, you might as well get them to install as many panels as possible because panels are really cheap. Labour is expensive, panels are cheap. And the interesting thing about batteries is batteries are still reasonably expensive per kilowatt hour, but that's, if you look at the underlying cost of the cell, which looks a bit like an AA cell, that your battery is just a collection of those cells, right? They're really cheap, but that hasn't flowed through yet to battery pricing. That's at a wholesale level. That will eventually happen. And these are, a number of the battery systems are so easy to add additional capacity to. It takes very little extra time. And so they'll sit there and go, you need 40 kilowatt hours. You'll struggle to ever use 40 kilowatt hours unless you've got an EV. But you probably even struggle to use 40 kilowatt hours then, and you probably struggle to fill it. You need a really big solar system. But you will essentially become an electricity producer, not really an electricity consumer. That's what's probably, we've already done that with solar, and we're going to do it with batteries too, I suspect. And for me personally, I think that's great. If for you, return on investment, if you care about your percentage return, if that's really what you're obsessed about, is I want to maximise my percentage return, maybe not so great. But if you want to maximise your aggregate cash flow and you've got a low cost of capital, that's 5%, because you're using your home loan, then maybe going big is going to be fine for you. And when you're exporting a lot of your stored power to the grid, it's still going to be a reasonable investment. So I'll just move to the last slide and finish it up. Sorry, because I've gone way too long. So I would say, should you get a battery? Yes, if you can afford it, if you've got reasonable means, but not at the expense of other emission reduction options like getting off gas, if you want to do that first. How big should you go? Ideally, the bigger it is, the greater the benefit for the energy system as a whole and the community. But you should be insisting with an installer on a very, very big saving per kilowatt hour if they are trying to push you anywhere beyond really 10 to 15 kilowatt hours. You want to see very little extra increase in price after the rebate is applied to go bigger, because you'll struggle to use it all, and really you'll be handing it to your electricity retailer for a VPP and saying, go for your life, try and make it money, and that's really what's going to happen. And I mean, the other thing is, it'd be great, you're going to get an EV and you're future-proofed. That's another thing. But the other thing to keep in mind is, do you have a big enough solar system to charge it up, or can you get yourself an electricity retail plan that has a window where they charge extremely low prices, and there are some of those offers out there where you might pay less than 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and then you can charge up your battery off that import period. So they're the things I'll leave you with, and I've talked way too long. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tristan. Okay, we're going to move quite quickly into a bit of Q&A. We might just bring the chairs up the front. Travis. Okay. So you might want to just be close to us. Turn the screen. Is that right? It's not in your eyes? Okay, we're all good. It's in your eyes. That's all good. Okay, so that was fascinating. Thank you so much, all of you. I really enjoyed that lovely graph at the end with the price of solar power in 2007. 2013. No, the early price per kilowatt hour. Yeah, insane. So we've come a long way on this energy transition that we're heading towards. If you've got any questions in the audience, we'll come to you really shortly. I'm sure there will be some, and it always takes a little while to get started. So I will kick off with a few questions. Tristan, I want to go back. I'm going to start with you. This is most recent in my mind, really. But what is the role of large-scale batteries? What is the role of large-scale batteries in terms of, providing that equalising impact across the grid? And is that something government and companies are investing in, or is this heavy lifting being done by the household sector, or should the household sector be doing that heavy lifting?
My answer is, we've seen there's a huge influx of battery capacity being built as we speak and coming online, which was quite staggering how quickly we've scaled up battery capacity. So we're talking thousands of megawatts. So we said the overall average electricity demand is 21,000 megawatts. So we're well on track to, I don't know the exact numbers in our database, but it's several thousands of megawatts of utility scale batteries. So we're probably not far off 10,000 megawatts of batteries within the next few years will be installed. So that's great. And the other thing that's important is they're quite sophisticated in the way that they can respond incredibly quickly, which is really useful for maintaining power system security, so to make sure that our power system is highly reliable. And household systems they can do it, but you need some really expensive control equipment on them. And so the utility scale stuff is very important, and thankfully it's happening. But the house, we need a lot of battery capacity. Now, when I say megawatts, those megawatts don't last very long. The average duration that they can last is 2 hours, although they're increasingly moving to 4 hours because batteries have just got so much cheaper. But they're only going to last 4 hours. So they could, let's say in maybe 10 years' time, we might have 21,000 megawatts of batteries, but they'll only last for a few hours, let's say. So we need more aggregate kilowatt hours of storage. So the household batteries, we really will need them as well. But the other thing is that household batteries are located exactly where we want them, right? So the utility scale one is not where the customer is. It's not where the person is that's consuming the demand. It's then got to go over all of these very expensive power lines to get to the customer. Whereas these ones are located right at the end of the most expensive section of power lines. Half of your bill is the power network. And the batteries are in a spot where they can avoid the most amount of cost in the electricity system. So that's why I think household batteries, yes, they're more expensive than utility scale batteries, but they also deliver value. And that's why I think household batteries are important.
And so while we're on that sort of scaling conversation, where do community batteries so-called community batteries come into this? Because I often feel like there's a bit of a misunderstanding around what a community battery is and who's putting it in and for whose benefit, except that it may potentially lead us to a more decentralised grid. But it really is utilities that are doing that investment, isn't it?
Yeah, look up. Mate, if you look up Tristan Edis community batteries, you'll see a diatribe of hate from me. Which is not directed towards a range of community groups that have helped popularise community batteries. It's probably hate towards the electricity networks. Okay, hate's too strong a word, but the electricity networks are regulated monopolies that operate on a cost-plus basis. Now, what that means is if you know that whatever costs you incur, you can just pass on to the end customer. It just ruins your incentives to be efficient. And so community batteries, a lot of people talked about it as community batteries, but they end up being network monopoly owned batteries. And then it's up to their discretion how much of that benefit of that battery gets passed on to you as the end consumer, and they've got to persuade and and you are really putting your trust in the Australian Energy Regulator to do a really good job of making sure that that network passes on savings to you that might be delivered by the battery. And quite frankly, the Australian Energy Regulator does a hopeless job. on that. And so I've been involved in preparing a report called the Network Super Profits Report, which documented that the networks have made huge returns well above what the regulator thought they had allowed. So that's why I'm not a massive fan of, I'm much more of a fan of household behind the meter batteries than I am of what people call community batteries, but in practice turn out to be networking batteries.
And try and hard. I mean, they sound like a nice idea, but in actual fact, anything that's outside, that's not behind the meter, is actually part of the network, effectively.
Yeah, that's right. I'll just do one last thing. One of the reasons why I think people have been supportive of community batteries for the right reason is because they're concerned about renters. And they look at it and go, well, renters, they don't have the discretion to install these things. It's up to a landlord, and the landlord just generally doesn't do that because they don't see the financial benefit of it. But that's why I'm hopeful that we can get what they call balcony solar systems, which is a form of a plug-in system that Germany has rolled out in a number of European countries. There are some issues there, but I understand that there are some technical feasibility there where you could essentially have a temporarily installed solar system or a temporarily installed battery and be able to utilise that within the household, so the renter could purchase that and then move it.
And what impact having an electric vehicle has on how you analyse your home electricity system, both in terms of, potentially for people who work from home during the day or people who don't, and then what the future potential is for electric vehicles to act as the home battery system and how far away that is. And what that, I'll come back to that because I'd like to see what does that do to that modelling. But Travis, what is that role that EVs can play?
This is the crystal ball then. EVs are the batteries on the wheels that I think AEMA and IXP has been part of the plan.
They're much bigger batteries, aren't they?
Yeah, so an EV battery will be, if you get a smaller vehicle, not going to talk brands, if you get a smaller vehicle, you'll have let's say a 50 kilowatt hour battery. You get a larger vehicle, it'll be up to a 75 to 80 kilowatt hour battery. If you go and buy a big young tank, they'll be at a 120 to 150 kilowatt hour battery. Bidirectional charging is coming by Christmas. We just don't know which Christmas it is. It's one of those things. It will happen. It will happen. And it's one of the things that will give these biological electron-based platforms. But it's nowhere near being here and now. There are two vehicles that are able to do it. However, I think it's less than 1,000 of them on the road, and a bidirectional charger will, I'm going to get into costs here, bidirectional charger will be in the vicinity of 4 to 6K installed. It's cost prohibitive, like batteries were, let's say, 10, 15 years ago. The benefit from a grid perspective, I'm going to leave to Tristan, but it gives you far more flexibility in terms of being able to day trade energy, which a lot of people like to think they're going to be able to do, but you still need the capacity sitting in underneath or between the wheels, because when there's an outage, there's every chance you're going to need to go to the shops or drop kids at school, whatever it may be. So when you need it, it's a bit like a taxi. When you need it, you'll need it there, and you need to be able to work with the telecom. Look, there's about 25 Chinese brand EVs coming into the market from today through to the end of the year. The vast majority of them are bidirectional ready. The market's not, but it's coming.
And I mean, Andrew, feel free to comment on this one as well. But what does if you do own an EV currently, what kind of what do you need to be thinking about in terms of whether a battery is going to have in terms of the payback time, depending on what your usage patterns are, your consumption patterns are?
Yeah, this is one we've looked at it basically now, and everyone will know basically if it's a 10 kilowatt hour battery, if you're going to charge it, will only get you like 61 kilometres. You could drain your home battery and it would get you, halfway down to Geelong. So people should be quite aware that it's not this magical thing that's going to charge up. It's really, as I showed in the graphs, it's really the top up of other things. So you'd be drawing, in summer, ideally we would be drawing the solar from the panels. Then if we went into the evening and we weren't using it because of the long evenings and the no need to use the heating, is it then the battery would perhaps play a little top-up role? And that's really what I think we need to be quite clear that the battery isn't going to be like, wow, overnight we're going to use this 10 kilowatt battery to charge up a car. It just isn't going to happen. It's just not physically possible. But it plays a role in terms of what we see as sort of an auxiliary to say, well, we've got some extra capacity on the battery. You haven't quite charged up enough. It's another resource that we have within our sort of arsenal of things we can use, and that's really how we've sort of seen it, as another addition to the rest of the self-sufficiency.
I was going to say, Travis, at the beginning you said that when you get somebody out to look at your energy consumption, that you need to get them to look at yours specifically and individualised kind of plan depending on what your situation is. Is this one of the places where that might have an impact about what you choose in terms of how you scale your battery, or like if you're working from home during the day and your car is charging up all day and you only use it at night time, do you need to get the battery? Is it going to be worthwhile? Those kinds of things.
That's
Sorry.
excellent. No, excellent question. There's two things here. One is the market is focused on what's known as it's focused on V2G, so vehicle to grid, being where we want it to go. But own your own castle first. What's going to come into play in much higher penetration is going to be V2H or V2L, vehicle to home or vehicle to load, where your asset, which is your battery with wheels, is going to be able to meet your needs first as a primary guy, and then when the grid is ready and the market, the technology is available to do that, then the vehicle to grid will come into play. But if you're thinking about an EV being an asset behind the meter, it's that vehicle to load that is probably going to be the primary benefit. Now, to answer your question around the modelling, yes, and this is where you need to spend time with someone. It's a face-to-face question, and we need to ask things about how do you live? How often are you home? Are you a shift worker? We recently someone who was a nurse, and their hours were predominantly at night, so their energy consumption profile, if they ran it through a standard, a typical load profile, wouldn't make any sense and pay that period all over the place. But so to model it, so we would do two things. We would, one, understand what is the current situation, then we look at what an electrified load profile looks like, because it does change. Then we look at what's the production required. If you've already got PV, then do we need additional PV to meet your total energy over that 24-hour period load? Whatever is not being consumed during production hours is the delta, which is what your storage capacity requirements are. And then you overlay that with your vehicle charging. And the vehicle charging a lot of the time, especially at the moment, is going to be, when you charge, is going to be determined by your retail tariff and what tariff can you get. So being able to model around how many kilometres you drive is still a bit of a difficult task because people's just riding habits change all the time. But it can be modelled over, it's just on a day-by-day basis. It's not as easy, but once you start to spread it out over weeks, months and years, you start to see those aggregate kilometres, and it's pretty impressive. Does that make sense?
Yep. Do we have any questions from, right, now we've got, there's a few hands, excellent. I'm going to start with this lady down in the front row.
How long does the battery last?
Sorry, do you have a mic? Might be easier if you can get a microphone to you. It's just quite hard to hear.
I'll do the probably more technical thing.
Thank you.
Answers, I'll just basically say this is one of the reasons we went for the 15-year warranty on our battery. Just basically say, it's 6,000 cycles, but I'll use 15 years. So really, that's the backup.
Andrew, you answering the question.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Oh, it's how long do the batteries last?
How long
Sorry, the question was how long do the batteries last? Then mine was just basically, we selected a battery based on a 15-year warranty. Often they have a 10-year warranty, and really that's, to try to get the support from the company that's at least as long as it would last. It's interesting, it's not quite a valid comparison. but we've had a hybrid Prius since 2005. We had to change over its battery about 1 year ago, so it's had about 18-year life before it needed to be, it was remanufactured. It didn't need to be disposed of. They just topped it up. This Melbourne company that remanufactures batteries. So the Prius battery lasted 18 or 19 years. That was 2005 technology. It's a 15-year warranty on this. I mean, I'm not too sure of the exact technical issues, but that's what we went for, and that was the reason, because return on investment, you need to know if it's going to be a return on investment more than 10 years, you need to know you're going to get it. It's going to be around for 10 years.
Yeah, the battery Prius was at 7 years.
Yeah, ours lasted 18.
Do they become less efficient? Like a car battery is supposed to, the efficiency of the battery drops, the home battery will become less efficient.
That's why the return on investment was a potentially 2% degradation, and why, if you are looking at purchasing this was a behavioural patterns, is to think that it's not going to be at the 100% capacity all its life. So you may need to not only put what you need, but then how is the battery going to degrade over the period of time? So you may need a buffer to say it's not going to be the same battery in 15 years. Our behaviours may be the same or increased. So therefore, you have to look economically what that sort of degradation and the buffer that you need to be able to do that. It's a bit like your mobile phone, right? It degrades over time, and do you, either get it reserviced, or do you buy a slightly bigger battery because I need that little bit of extra capacity at that particular time? So it's really important.
Thanks, Andrew.
Just quickly on batteries, if we start to talk about warranties, and I touched on it when I was speaking earlier, you can have two batteries that have a 10-year warranty, but unless you start to understand what that warranty is, so state of health of the battery, you can have a 10-year warranty for battery A, and battery B also has a 10-year warranty. One will have a 70% state of health, so that means after 10 years, it will still give you 70% usage at that moment in time, whereas the other one might have 45. So it's not apples and apples. 10 years, there's a big ticket item that's thrown out there. You can put a fifth. Carl, we'll talk about this later. State of health is a really big factor when you're looking at batteries. So you need to know that the warranty is like for like, because the headline number will be in 10 years, but what you actually see is not the same.
I'm going to go to the lady in the red. The red with the microphone.
Thank you. Great discussion today. I'm interested in what people do who live in apartments, say a set of 10, 3 stories, and there's 9 apartments. How do you share the roof space, and what are the legal requirements, and can it be done to have solar if you happen to own one of those 10 apartments?
I'm going to take that one and say that's a 3-hour presentation in itself. It's very complicated because of the governance rules around the body corporate, and there are some organisations that are starting to look at that and about how roof space can be shared. It's much easier when you're in, a townhouse style where you have your own roof. But as soon as you're sharing the roof is owned by the body corporate. So any decisions that are taken with regards to that resource are collective decisions, and then they need to abide by the body corporate rules. So that's the response for solar, which is why solar is still kind of the unsolvable share problem for apartments. The smaller your apartment block, I reckon the more success you have at getting a win, because you've got less people to persuade.
Can I just respond to that, please? I was involved with the body corporate, chair of the body corporate. We had a look at putting solar on the roof. There is a system available with a sharing concept where the Victorian government is actually subsidising, I think it's up to 2,500 per unit to put the solar on. But we had a look at it for a 12-unit, 3-storey block of homes. Absolutely clear roof space, would have been lovely. But we had to install new electrics at about 35,000. So the subsidy sort of covered the solar cost, but the 35,000 for the electrics sort of made it not economic. So there is a system now which the Victorian government has renewed.
There's a rebate.
$2,000.
You still need to get body corporate approval, collective decision making, the choice on it.
There's a system available.
Yeah.
Can I also ask?
Sorry, I just want to move on to just see if there's any more.
Just quickly, the DSPs are probably the biggest blocker from a share. So when you're dealing with what a corporate constructor, the DSP upgrade they require to make it commercially viable is very difficult.
Because of the size of the systems.
Yeah. So you're looking at infrastructure upgrades as opposed to being able to deal with what's happening behind the meter. We've got a solution that we've got a market with.
Because it effectively becomes a mid-scale system, like bigger than household and smaller than industrial. We're getting a little bit of batteries. We're getting onto solar. We've got more questions about batteries. Down the back there, microphone.
I'm thinking about buying it and getting a battery at this stage. I'm wondering what the pros and cons of a virtual power plant are.
Pros and cons of
A virtual power plant.
virtual power plant.
I'll just, this is about virtual power, I'll just answer from my perspective. I really, with ours, I just wanted a full year of testing before I got involved in that. I just really wanted to run it almost as a vanilla system like a control before getting involved in that. There are obviously gains, and Amber and a whole range of other companies, and let everyone talk about that. There's obviously gains in terms of the system of being able to push that back at the appropriate time, which is great. There are also potential problems we've experienced of locking contracts, saying, well, we're now going to be locked into this, but our conditions and usage patterns have changed. We'd actually like to use this more to power our EV. So our only thing was, so our released experience was to be cautious and just sort of understand how it runs and how it reflected our lifestyle and depending on our future, and then potentially look at a VPP and the various options that were available. I'm sure there's lots of other opinions on that.
Did you want to add?
They come in so many different varieties of shapes and sizes that some of the structures that the retailers have gone with are really nice and simple, and they'll give you certain controls around it, where they'll say, look, it's only going to be used, we're only going to draw on 12 times a year, we'll tell you when it is, we'll never use any more than 50%, and so they can give you certain comfort around, okay, with that particular offer, I'm confident that they're barely going to use it, and okay, I'm going to give you this whole heap of money. The other thing you'll need to think about is how big a battery you go. If you do end up, like, it looks like a lot of people are going to be installing 20 kilowatt hour, 30 kilowatt hour batteries that don't have an EV. They're going to really struggle to use that capacity for their own usage. And so then it's a matter of, okay, well, I've got a bunch of capacity I'm not using that effectively is, I could get anything is better than nothing. And it depends on what battery you end up going for, the size of the battery. But it will be very attractive to go bigger at the present moment, given the pricing that I'm seeing and given the nature of the rebate and the structure per kilowatt hour. And so that means I think VPP is going to be the best way to utilise that capacity when you don't need it. And you're just going to have to do a bit of homework and reassure yourself, okay, this guy's not going to be sitting there smashing my battery every single day and absolutely thrashing it, because the more it gets used, the faster it wears out, okay, and the faster it degrades. So that needs to be taken into account, and you don't want to end up in a situation where, it gets to 9 p.m, the guy's drained your battery, and now you're importing from the grid and they're charging you 30 cents a kilowatt hour for it when you thought you were going to use your solar, otherwise you'd be getting paid 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So, but there's good offers out there and there's bad offers. And the other thing to be very careful about is discounts, upfront discounts on the battery is often the way that the more less ethical VPPs operate, is they'll go, I'll give you a battery, I'll take care of it, I'll discount it for $3,000, you join my VPP, and by the way, you're locked in for the next 5 years, and if you opt out, then you're going to have to pay back this huge amount of money to pay back the battery, and actually the battery doesn't look as good as it first did. So just buyer beware, people offering gifts, what do they want in return? But there are some, I think, some pretty good offers out there as well.
No, I'm just.
I think that's actually minimal.
Oh.
No, you're allowed to speak.
The only thing I was just on the VPP is the community batteries. There's almost involved a lot of startups. It's a shame this idea of a community battery and the VPP. I'd be quite happy, as you sort of said, give away anything to say it's not being used. If there was a charitable trust of some sort that said, actually, I'm going to give you 5 cents, like you're getting during the day, but that would then contribute to a reduction of everyone else's energy bills to say, actually, we have an cost of living crisis, etc. Is that okay? We're going to give you 5 cents and we're going to pass it on for 10 cents for people who decide to join whichever charitable trust it is. That I'd be more than happy to do that because it's spare, but it would contribute to lower costs of energy for everyone else. I'd be more than happy to do it. If there's a charity out there that's got the technology and the means, I'm on board.
So I've got one more absolutely busting question. Question, not comment. Yep.
Yeah, good evening. The last question then. Just a type of battery, lithium, sodium, health of the battery after 10 years. Can you shine a light on that, please?
Travis, would you like to take that one? Not really. That might be the end of the evening.
The flavour of the month is lithium iron phosphate. There's a whole range of different technologies that are coming to market. If you're willing to be a guinea pig,
Early adopter, Travis. Early adopter.
I suppose. If you're willing to take a risk on untried technology, then go down that path. But I for one, we deal in known knowns, and we know what lithium iron phosphate can do. So we tend to stick to that because we know what we're going to get from it. All the things that are coming out, sodium and so forth, it's just they haven't been in market long enough in residential use cases. So
it's a good take. Just I've got one more question for you, which is, you said at the beginning that we need batteries, and we need batteries in order to elevate or maintain the installation of solar. Do you think that the federal government knew that, and that's why they've gone down this path of offering this subsidy to get everybody started on it? Have they looked at your numbers, Tristan, and said, he's right, we need to do this? Are they thinking about that strategically? In terms of what's going on?
Sausage nominated, especially in policy.
You never know what kind of influence you've had.
I do wonder to some degree that the step change scenario, which is the Australian Energy Market Operator does these forecasting exercises, and the step change scenario is what essentially is structured around what government aspirations are, not necessarily government policy, like aspirations. And so I think there's actually an obligation that they went, oh, well, to actually achieve the step change scenario, there's a battery in the modelling. Oh, okay. A battery relay. Oh, okay. Oh, you need a relay. Oh, do I? Oh, okay. Right. Are they going to be popular with the electric? Yeah, they will. Oh, am I struggling with competing against Peter Dutton? He's talking about all this other stuff.
It's a win-win.
Cost of living. Okay, I'll go. Okay, I'll do the battery. And I think that's probably the way the sausage came.
Policies made. Thank you so much. Okay, I know that Tim's giving me the wrap-up signal. So before we do, I just want to remind you that we'll be here, we're allowed to be here at the school until 9 o'clock. So if you'd like to go around and talk to people who are around the edge about their products or their services, then please do take that opportunity after we wrap up. I'd also like to just acknowledge the Bayside Community Climate Crisis Action Group who hosted us here tonight. And also the Glen Ira Climate Action Network, I think, are here also tonight. If you're in the Glen Ira area, go and sign up with them. And to give a quick plug for the infamous Facebook group, My Efficient Electric Home, which Tim established nearly 10 years ago. It's about to have its 10-year anniversary, which is a great resource if you need to get any more information or ask people questions about these issues. And also I should plug the Renew website and the Getting Off Gas Toolkit and Renew and Sanctuary magazines, all great sources of background reading if you are a bit of an energy geek or a sustainable home geek like some of us are. So there's some great community resources, and There's always lots of information and advice available. So I'd like to put your hands together to thank our three speakers. People give you bottom-up approach from the household level right up to the policy level, and obviously some amazing expertise in the room. So, oh, looks like Tim's got some gifts for everybody, so that it was worthwhile turning up. So, I hope you really enjoyed that and got lots out of it. If you haven't had all of your questions answered, maybe come and grab one of these three guys on the stage or one of the people around the edge. I think there's a lot of expertise in the room. So thank you very much for coming along tonight. I'm going to pass back to Joe. If you can just sit tight for a second.
Well, that's okay. I'll just come over here. Yeah. And I've got one last gift, and that's for Helen. Thanks, Helen. Thank you. Everybody's got a whole lot more knowledge about home batteries right now after all of that. It's fantastic. And I love that vision of the multi-net you going off, down the street and then measure on it and having a bit of a party. Okay, and just a few thank yous. I want to just say a big thank you to Brighton Secondary College for their venue tonight. It's been terrific. And also a thank you to Buxton Real Estate. They've donated the sign that we had at the front, very colourful. It might have enticed people along. And a reminder to sign up for our working groups. We've got our BCAG table down there. Connie's holding up the signs. You can go down there and have a look at all those different things that you can contribute to. And we do have to be out by 9 o'clock. But if we've got our exhibitors that are there patiently waiting down there, so do go and have a chat to the exhibitors. And just a reminder about our next forum, which is Wednesday the 27th back here in a few weeks' time.